Okay, so now it is part deux, looking at the changes that occurred in Weimar under the leadership of Stresemann and Hindenburg. Again, we spoke at this in greater depth last year. There's that entire chapter from this book about Germany and the international community. So, one of the biggest things that happens, of course, is the international rehabilitation of Germany and kind of reincorporation into the international and diplomatic community. And one of the bestest things that happened for Germany was this reconciliation with the Allied powers. And so this happened during this quote unquote golden age of Germany under the leadership of Stresemann. And so Germany is cooperating with the other European powers instead of being isolated and really only having their only friend be Russia. They're brought back in. Now, keep in mind, Germany in no way, shape, or form drops the Treaty of Rapallo that she's cooperating with Russia, but now in a way she's playing both ends. And so in 1925, as you know, they signed the Locarno treaties and they accepted the new western borders. That is, they accepted the Alsace-Lorraine kind of thing, but and they accepted that the Rhineland would have to be demilitarized. And in turn of Germany saying, okay, I accept these aspects of the Treaty of Versailles, the Allies are going to get out of Cologne, they're going to get out of the Rhineland, and they're going to stop inspecting the German military. Now, of course, important to note is that in no way, shape, or form did Germany say that they are going to accept what has happened in the East, right? And so here we have Stresemann hanging out with his, homies, like they did, dropping it like it's hot at Locarno, as one does. So Germany is also joining the League of Nations. This is a super big deal. Reparations are reduced in 1929 and then essentially ended, right, in 1932 with Lausanne. And then from the position of the European powers, they saw Germany as basically coming back into the fold, being involved in Europe, being involved in sort of world affairs. However, Stresemann is like, yeah, all right, now that I'm up in here, it's time for us to start talking about this Treaty of Versailles. So it's one of those things like, in a way, they were looking at this relationship in very, very, very different ways. So this brings us to this period that is known as the Golden Age of Weimar. Essentially, we have political stability, we have economic recovery. There was hope, right? These were the best years of Weimar's life. These are the best. Yeah, that's right. I sing good. All right, here we go. Essentially, what we have is this partial economic recovery because of the Dawes Plan. We see an increase in wages, and now we have also the Weimar establishes this sort of welfare state, which was pretty innovative of the time, right? And there's more social support for workers. We have new schools, new hospitals. All of these sort of like social services are being given back to people and kind of increasing stability in people's lives and kind of generating more support for government, right? We have a modernization of German industry. And so one of the things that they did were they borrowed some of the techniques and organization of factories and stuff like that from the US. So they've modernized and the exports have increased by 40%. So now they're earning foreign income and of course more jobs and stuff. There is this period of cultural flowering. So we have jazz, borrowed from the US. We have dance clubs. We have art. We have like music. We have like film. We have some of the best known classic Hollywood film stars coming at this time. Of course, they became classic Hollywood film stars because they had to escape Nazi Germany and then got jobs working in Hollywood but hey. But we have this sort of like cultural flowering, which looks like Germany is coming back and headed in a new direction. No power seizures, moderate parties are in the Reichstag, there's political stability, coalitions can form. However, everything looked great on the surface, right? But we still have high levels of unemployment. We still have this economic recovery is dependent on foreign loans, and therefore it's still kind of unstable. And there is no boom in agriculture, and wages and prices are still pretty low. So, it kind of depends on how you want to look at it, right? Maybe Weimar started, and then maybe she wasn't allowed to get to where she could be because of other stuff. And so we have here the same roaring 20s that happened in the US. You have the same thing happening in parts of Germany as well. Here, people dancing at the hotels, dropping the Charleston and wearing different kinds of clothes and all of this good stuff. So at the same time that we have like this economic recovery and so on and so forth, we have this, as I said previously, sort of this flowering of Weimar culture. And there was a lot of really, really kind of interesting stuff happening. So we have what is known as German Expressionism. And one of the things to keep note is when we look at Hitler is a lot of the stuff that is part of this Weimar culture and this explosion and experimentation is stuff that is going to be banned by the Nazi government. And so here we have Otto Dix, Big City. And so we see this sort of exploration of what is actually happening in Germany at this time. Berlin kind of rivals Paris as being this center of culture and experimentation. And a lot of the stuff that's happening is really people commenting on the culture and criticizing the culture, right? We have this book, All Quiet on the Western Front, which was published in 1929. And so this was a massive bestseller. And one of the things about it is that it tells the story of World War I from the perspective of a German soldier. So hence the whole Western Front thing. And I have to say, like, I read this book when I was in 7th grade because my teacher made me. And I was like totally traumatized. Like, I still remember scenes from this book decades later. And it was really, really disquieting. And so this was challenging the whole stabbed in the back in myth. And so kind of re-examining what the beliefs were about World War I and sort of their culture, right? We have the pillars of society. And so we have artists. A lot of the artists were working from the left. And we have new styles of art happening, but also here we have this guy here caricaturing the industrialists and the decision makers and so on and so forth. The military. We have this explosion in cabaret and dance, stuff that is considered risque. And Marlene Dietrich was one of the most famous German actors who then went to become, again, really famous in Hollywood. And so we have these stuff challenging the cultural mores. We have radio becomes huge. So a lot of people are embracing this technology. We have new art created for the radio. And of course, the radio as a technology is going to be heavily exploited. by the Nazis, but this growth in radio happens at this point in time. Oh, another thing about the cabarets, so many of them dancing and singing and wearing minimal amounts of clothing. And we have movies like Metropolis, which looks at oppressed workers being forced to live robotic life underground and ruled by an upper class, again challenging the status quo and kind of taking to task this explosion in wealth that's happened but has not happened equally. There's this move toward realism in art and all of this stuff kind of challenging the traditional ways of looking at stuff. I didn't put anything on there, but we have the back. So all of this cultural experimentation is going to have some sort of impact on the Weimar Republic in and of itself, right? One of the things is a lot of this was mostly located in the cities. And generally, the cities are more forward-looking and more sort of experimental and less conservative than the rural areas. So it's not like this spread evenly everywhere. And that means that a lot of the people in rural areas were still holding on to these traditional beliefs and still practice traditional culture, still very religious. And this was challenging the traditional beliefs of people. And a lot of people were attracted to this explosion in Weimar culture, but a lot of people were really repelled by it. You have, and reasons include, one, this ideological connection to the left. And of course, and what that means, right? The ideological left very much challenges the traditional ways of life, the traditional ways of viewing the world, stuff that people are really attached to. The ideological left tends to be anti-religion. It tends to look at changing the accepted hierarchy. With this culture, we have a lot of nudity in the cabarets. We have a lot of prostitution. We have a open homosexuality. Women are cutting their hair and smoking and getting jobs and dressing really skimpily. So this becomes something that many people react negatively to. And so a lot of people kind of were attracted to the right when they are pointing out all of these negative things associated with Weimar, this sort of cultural degeneration, and raising up the traditional cultures and values and stuff like this. So in a way, you can say that this cultural experimentation and relaxing of the mores that came about in the cities as a result of Weimar becomes a stick that the Nazis use to beat the Republic to death. In sum, keeping in mind everything that you know from last year and the things that have been discussed in the previous two lectures on Weimar Republic, that is looking at the birth and organization of government, as well as the social, political, economic obstacles faced from 1919 to 1923, with consideration with all of this, was this really a golden age? And now, the part that all of y'all have been waiting anxiously for. Okay, here it comes. Why didn't the skeleton go to the party? Because he had nobody to go with.